Welcome back to the IDP Plus Advice Show, our second show of the offseason. We're going to be talking more about post-free agency impact for IDPs. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Well, I'm thrilled to be back with you all again this week for another IDP Advice Show. I'm your host, Ricky Rodriguez. You can find me at RickyRod66 on X/Twitter. I mentioned last week how much I love the NFL season, of course, and I love the NFL draft, but I also love me some free agency. If you missed our last IDP Advice Show, we talked about post-free agency impacts for interior defensive linemen / defensive tackles. We talked about edge / defensive ends as well. If you missed that, you can check on the same IDP Plus channel, on this IDP Plus YouTube channel on Spotify, and listen back or watch back on it. So I encourage you to do that if you missed it. And as part of that, we talked about the reasons why looking at the winners and losers from post-free agency was so important. Today, we're going to talk about linebackers specifically, and then in our next show, we'll get into defensive backs. But once again, looking at these winners and losers is going to give some great food for thought in terms of drafting this year's best team and not last year's best team. That's really key. The repeat rates at all the defensive positions are much lower than expected. I talked about a lot of that during the opening of last week's show, and I'll mention when we talk about linebackers here as well a little bit later. So we want to focus on the future and not the past. And we, based on some of the movements, based on some of the contract signings, based on what we're seeing with changes in defensive coordinators and thus defensive schemes, players leaving teams and moving into new opportunities, players joining teams, impacting others' opportunities, changes in offensive philosophies that will impact defensive snaps. All those things come into play. And as we go through the linebacker winners and losers, you'll hear me talking about that. And thus, that will give you ideas of maybe who to target in redraft or who you might want to even start making preliminary offers on from a dynasty perspective as well. So we are going to have a little bit of a redraft and dynasty takeaway as part of this. I will mention ages, not necessarily for rookies or second-year players, but for a lot of the other players. So you can keep that in mind. If you think I'm talking more redraft or dynasty, you can pick that up pretty easily. I know scoring systems are different, as I talked about last week, but in this particular case, we're going to be looking at it from the standpoint of tackle heavy scoring as well as big play heavy scoring, and big plays being your sacks, your interceptions, your forced fumbles, etc. So that's with the thought process when I did the rankings for winners and losers. Now, I know that there could be additional free agent signings. I know that there is an NFL draft coming up. So this is post-free agency, pre-NFL draft. Know that when you take this into take these recommendations into context and these thoughts into context. But once again, terrific grounding as we head into the new year. Now, about to jump into linebackers, but before we do, just want to mention that there's an incredible sale going on IDPplus.com. Using the promo code IDP2025, no plus in there, IDP 2025, 2025, you'll get a whopping 50% off any subscription. Great articles, great rankings, great tools. I love the tools. And I have a cheat sheet right here, but the snap count tool, the injury report tracker, team fantasy points allow, which is great when you're trying to make close decisions in terms of who to start based on who those players are playing and how those defenses tend to do against those positions. Weekly fantasy finishes by position for each individual player, numbers 1 through however many of that particular position. So you can see for consistency and what is an outlier game and things along those lines. So Great tools, great articles, great rankings. Of course, there's Discord as well. Take advantage of this 50% off of any subscription, folks. All righty. With that, let's move into the linebackers. And I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I want to make sure that we hit it here. In terms of repeat rates for linebackers, on average of the top 12 from the previous year, only 4 linebackers repeat in the top 12. Of the top 24, on average, only 11 repeat. So that's why you want to pay particular attention to these winners and losers, because there's an opportunity for a lot of shifting, and it really should impact and influence your own personal draft cheat sheets, how you go into drafts, trade targets, etc. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to mention is related to the rookie class. This is not an overall deep, strong, off-ball / Mike linebacker class. When we talk about linebackers, we're not talking about outside linebackers, edge players. They fell into that defensive end / edge / outside linebacker category that I talked about in the last show last week. This is really more your off-ball, your Mike, your inside linebackers that we're talking about. So it's not a deep rookie class for that. The 2 top linebackers, and I have to put linebackers in quotes on this, are right now Jalen Walker from Georgia and Jihad Campbell from Alabama. Now, the thing about both of those is they're getting a lot of publicity about their ability to come off the edge. And so if you're in a tackle heavy league, we'll have to be very careful about where these 2 gentlemen get drafted into. And we have to be careful about assumptions we make about impacts to the linebacker core that for the teams that they may be joining. We'll talk about those rookies later in subsequent shows. More to come on that. But right now, I just wanted to kind of plant that seed that it's not a deep class, and all the more reason these winners and losers that we're talking about right now have a lot of viability. Okay, I have 17 winners that I've ranked my personal 1 to 17 ranking. So you can argue some of the order on some of these, but once again, I took into account there's multiple scoring systems, but I went heavier on big play for big play scoring, as well as heavier on tackle heavy as well. With that, number 17 on my list is Anthony Walker. Age 30, he left the Miami Dolphins to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At this point in time, the expectation is that he will start next to the returning Lavonte David, who is a free agent who re-signed with Tampa Bay at, I believe it was 35 or 36. I forgot exactly where he is, but he's getting up there in age and probably his last year realistically. Now, what do we know about Anthony Walker? He gets hurt a lot. So the reason I have him down at 17 is I expect him to start the year next to Lavonte David, but I expect him to get injured at some point and expect him to be replaced by Servasia Dennis. So Servasia Dennis is someone I would want to stash. I would want him in particularly deep redraft leagues, highly competitive redraft leagues. I would want him to be one of my later round picks that I know I'm stashing, and not drop him at the first waiver wire, but just know that he will get his opportunities. Servasia also may get an opportunity in passing down situations in place of Anthony Walker as well. So that's why I have my winners. I've got Anthony Walker way down number 17. Expect him to start, but expect between injuries and potentially coming off the field in passing situations that he's not a big player when we look at next year. Okay. The other thing I'll mention is Jihad Campbell has been mocked in many drafts to Tampa Bay. And if he does end up in Tampa Bay, I would feel really good about that as them using and leveraging Campbell there and not necessarily as much on the edge because of the age of Lavonte David and Anthony Walker on a 1-year contract. Okay, let's go to Cleveland at number 16. We have no news on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. It doesn't sound good related to his neck still. So without any positive news, I'm going to assume, unfortunately, the worst case scenario right now, because we often hear, oh, he's ahead of schedule, blah, blah. We're not hearing any of that related to JOK. So Devin Bush comes in at number 16 on my list at age 27. PFF actually graded him very well in the last half of the year in terms of overall performance from a linebacker perspective. He was in the top 20. So that's a great sign. His competition at this point would be Jordan Hicks, who's age 33, who's also very injury prone. Muhammad Diabate, who is in his second year, who is a later round draft pick, or maybe his third year, whichever, fairly young, but not a high draft pick, not a lot of high draft capital. So not expecting a whole lot there as well. So I think that gives Devin Bush a huge opportunity if JOK stays out and someone who could finish in the top 24. The one caution why I don't have him higher on this list is Cleveland has done a lot of rotation in linebackers under Jim Schwartz these past couple of years. JOK finally was starting to get 90+% of the snaps, as good as he was playing, finally got to 90% for a few games before he got injured. So that is the risk with Devin Bush. Won't see him that high. Does have an opportunity for top 24, not necessarily top 12. He was number 16 on my winners list for linebackers. Number 15, we go to my New Orleans Saints, and we talk about Pete Werner, age 26. Saints are switching to a 3-4, and I talked about earlier briefly. And if you go back to my show last week on defensive lineman and edge, you'll hear me talk more about some of these examples of changes and how they have impacts and so forth. But if the Saints go into this 3-4, I expect Pete Werner to move inside with Demario Davis. And on the edges, you'll see the Carl Grandersons, you'll see the Chase Youngs, etc. That's how I expect to see the edges. And then also Cam Jordan playing a little bit of edge when they play 3-4, 4-3, etc. So given all that, Werner moves to the inside. Why don't I have him higher? He's been injury prone. He is a little bit on the lighter side, and though they signed him to a new 3-year contract last year, which I still don't get why they did that, to be honest with you, I am worried that he could stay healthy, and will he be able to hold his ground on the inside, which is one of the areas he has struggled a little bit. He is a good tackler, but he isn't good at getting off of off of blockers, excuse me. So keep in mind the names also of Nefi Sewell, an undrafted free agent, yes, related to Penei Sewell, and DeMarco Jackson, a former 5th or 6th round pick of the Saints, who's had some injury issues. Those two, I wouldn't be surprised if Werner gets hurt or struggles, replaces him. But for now, Pete Werner, once again, down at number 15. He's not in my top 5, but he is a winner at this point in time with the change to the 3-4 and him moving to the inside. Okay. At number 14, Tyrese Knight from Seattle. Yes, Seattle re-signed Ernest Jones. So at this point in time, they've done nothing else of significance at the linebacker position, have the Seahawks. So I expect Knight to be the number 2 linebacker. Now, last year, when he moved into that starting linebacker role next to Ernest Jones after the release of Tyrell Dodson during their bye week, he only played between 74 and 82% of the snaps, roughly. There was 184, there was 188. Some of that, I take it back. There was one where he played almost 100% when Ernest Jones was out for a game as well. But in general, he was in that 74 to 82% range. Ernest Jones had some surgery, expected to be 100% at the start of the year, should play 100% of the snaps. So Tyrese Knight, he's a winner because they haven't done anything yet, which would impact his being on the field. But as a number 2 linebacker, 75 to 80% of the snaps most likely, not riveting, doesn't move him near the top 12, but a chance for top 24 to top 30 range kind of thing. Okay, let's go to Dallas. Kenneth Murray, age 27, moves into Dallas. They traded away a late round pick to the Titans for him. Kenneth Murray, former 1st round draft pick, continues to make good money, but yet he is just a guy. He is a veteran. He has experience. He will start the Mike position. He will put up counting stats for you. He should get a decent amount of tackles, but he's just a guy, folks. So he will make a lot of tackles, and he will miss a lot of tackle opportunities as well, which can be frustrating. So I've got him in that number 13 range. I don't have in my top 17 Jack Sanborn. who the Cowboys also signed. He's age 25. They brought him over from the Bears. And of course, Matt Eberflus, the former head coach and defensive coordinator for the Bears, is now the DC in Dallas. I still expect Sanborn to be the number 3 linebacker. With DeMarvion Overshown injured, I expect Maris Lufau, the second-year player out of Notre Dame, to be the number 2 linebacker until Overshown returns from injury, if he even returns this year. As a side note, if he does, I'm still not taking a chance on him because that was a brutal knee injury. I'm waiting one more year, folks, before I'm going after Overshown. Okay. But anyway, Sanborn I see is a number 3 for the Cowboys, which has him on the field maybe 40, 45% of the snaps, maybe 55 if we're lucky, but don't see him getting a whole lot of playing time. So Kenneth Murray is my number 13, Sanborn much lower down the list. You could argue that maybe there's a 13 and 13A or 13A and 13B with Lufau as well, but that's Dallas for you. Okay, let's go to number 12. Elandon Roberts, signing with the Las Vegas Raiders, age 31. Now, Robert Spillane and Devon Diablo both left via free agency. We'll talk about both of those gentlemen a little bit later. Here are the other linebackers besides Elandon Roberts on the Las Vegas Raiders depth chart / roster. Tommy Eichenberg, Luke Masterson, Amari Burney, Kanai Muaga, Amari Gainer. Not exactly your Chicago Bears, Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, etc. type of linebacker core. Okay, just not there. Do I expect Las Vegas to do more? Absolutely, I do. Now let's talk a little bit about Elandon Roberts, though. I still think he's a 2-down thumper. Now Robert Spillane improved in pass coverage, but still wasn't great. And they kept the same defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, did the Pete Carroll, so should be a similar system. Does that mean he leaves Elandon Roberts on the field for 3 downs? I think early in the year, probably. I think as the year progresses, he realizes that he can't live with Elandon Roberts on the field in passing downs, and they pull him off the field, and he's just that 2-down thumper. So that's why I have him in this number 12 range. His combined tackles the last 3 years, well, let's go back 4 years actually. Okay. So it was 46 combined tackles is all he had with Pittsburgh. And that's because he was alternating going on and off the field with Peyton Wilson, who was better in pass coverage. That's ultimately what I see, by the way, as I was alluding to earlier. That's ultimately what I see happening with Roberts as the season progresses for Las Vegas. In the years before that, he had 101, 107, 83 combined tackles. So there's a chance in tackle-heavy leagues, if he does stay on for 3 downs for the full year, he could be quite productive from a combined tackles perspective and sneak into the top 24, once again, depending on scoring systems. I just don't see him staying 3 downs on the field, which limits his impacting capabilities to put up points for IDP. So that's why I have him on number 12 from the winner's perspective and not much higher up the list. I know some people, because there's nothing else on the Raiders roster right now, have him much higher in their thought process for this coming year. I'm just not there, folks. I just see more changes happening, and I just don't see him on the field. Okay, enough on him. Let's move on. Number 11, D. Winters with San Francisco, age 25. John Lynch even in a press conference talked about the fact that he was excited to see what D. Winters is going to do here in the linebacker core for San Francisco. And that was part of John Lynch talking about all the losses they've had in the offseason, losing Talanoa Hufanga, losing Trey Greenlaw, losing Leonard Floyd, trading Deebo Samuel, yada, yada, yada. Lost a lot of folks. They're planning on having a lot of young guys step up. D. Winters at this point in time would be the number 2 linebacker next to Fred Warner. And in that role, he should get about 90% of the snaps. There's no longer Devon, I don't want to play. I'm going to walk to the locker room. Campbell, he's gone. As I mentioned, Dre Greenlaw is gone, left to go to the Denver Broncos in free agency, and he may be a little bit higher up the winners list. We may talk about him a little bit later. But D. Winters is the man right now for San Francisco. Got him at number 11. Not worried about Luke Gifford, who they signed in free agency. He's more of a special teams guy. Not worried about Jalen Graham, who they actually released at one point, then signed him back to the practice squad and so forth. So as of now, D. Winters, number 11. These next three folks on the list are all second-year players. The first one at number 10 is Omar Speights with the Los Angeles Rams. So what have the Rams done? They let Christian Roseboom go in free agency to Carolina. They lost Jake Hummel in free agency as well. And they haven't re-signed Troy Reeder. So those were the big four linebackers at any point last year, and three of them are gone. So that leaves Omar Speights. Now, Omar Speights was being pulled off the field in passing situations, and Christian Roseboom was staying on the field. The Rams signed Nate Landman from the Atlanta Falcons. What was Landman's thing? He was on the field a lot in running situations, particularly when Troy Andersen came back from injury with Atlanta. But Landman would leave the field in passing situations. So you have two linebackers with the Rams, Omar Speights and Nate Landman, who are probably better against the run than the pass. But right now, I'm leaning towards Omar Speights being the number one linebacker and not Landman, and thus him staying on the field more in passing situations, and hopefully that extra year in the same system will help him, and part of the reason I have him over Landman. So Omar Speights, number 10 in my winners for linebackers. Number 9, Jalen Carleys with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the risk here is that there is a whole new defensive coordinator and thus a new linebacker scheme. But if you look with Lou, and I can't say his last name, the former Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator, I think it's Anaramo, but he played two linebackers almost 100% of the time, and that was Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. Zaire Franklin will obviously be number 1. Number 2 was EJ Speed last year. He's a free agent, and he hasn't been signed. We'll talk about him in the losers here in a little bit. But Jalen Carleys was the backup to Speed last year. Colts haven't done anything else at the linebacker position. So as of now, at this particular moment, just particularly Grant Stewart was lost in free agency as well. So as of now, Jalen Carleys is the number 2 linebacker in a defensive scheme where he should play 100% of the snaps. Thus, I have him at number 9. Don't have him higher because he was also previously a safety learning the linebacker position. And so I think some of these other folks ahead of him have more upside for various reasons. But Carleys could be a true winner for you. At number 8 with Philadelphia, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. You're saying, wait a second, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean. Well, Nakobe Dean had that late season knee injury. Oren Burks stepped into his role during the playoffs in the Super Bowl, had a great Super Bowl, but he is now a free agent who has gone to another team. In fact, that other team is the Cincinnati Bengals. With that leaves Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to come in and take on the role here in his second year that Nakobe Dean would be playing if he wasn't injured. Now, does that present risk if Nakobe Dean is able to come back late in the year, week 14, 15, 16, 17, something along those lines from this late season knee injury he's had? Yes, it does. So it's something when we get to week 9, 10 will want to monitor if we draft Jeremiah Trotter Jr., want to monitor Nakobe Dean's situation in redraft leagues, maybe figure out a way to stash him late in the year just in case he comes back and he usurps Jeremiah Trotter Jr. But in that Eagles defense and the way Bond and Nakobe Dean played and the stats they were able to put up in that Fangio defense, Jeremiah Trotter steps in that role, feel really good about him. He's number 8 on my winners list for linebackers. At number 7, okay, this is a little bit of a cheat here, folks, but I'm calling it the TBD number 2 linebacker at Tennessee. So don't know who it's going to be, but that Tennessee linebacker I expect to play 100% of the snaps, same defensive scheme. Whoever tended to play in those two linebacker positions tended to get very good counting stats, meaning IDP scoring. And so we're going to watch very carefully to see who wins that number 2 spot for Tennessee. Next to Cody Barton, who they signed to be their number 1 linebacker, and of course they traded away Kenneth Murray. Jack Gibbons gone, Luke Gifford gone, Jerome Baker gone. It's wide open. So you're saying, Ricky, well, what about Cedric Gray? What about Otis Reese? What about James Williams? Don't have any faith or confidence in any of those guys to really take on the number 2 role. You would have thought, in particular, Cedric Gray, as I believe was a 4th-round pick last year, that as it got later in the year with some of the injuries, that they were stuck him in there and giving him some opportunities, and they really did. So if they would have gotten a little bit of opportunities, I said, yeah, there's a chance there. But even with that, even with that opportunity, they didn't do it last year in Tennessee. Same coaching staff. So we're calling our number 7 winner TBD number 2 linebacker at Tennessee. As the offseason progresses, we'll talk about that one more. At number 6, Foye Oluokun with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Going to his age 30 year, and you can potentially throw into that Devin Lloyd, who's going to his age 27 year, but this is really about Foye Oluokun. Whole new coaching staff, including a new defensive coordinator, and hopefully they go back to using Foye Oluokun as he was in his very productive years prior to last year when they started trying to put him on the edge to generate a pass rush or help generate a pass rush. And also this whole rotation thing that they had going on with the 4 linebackers, which was just a disaster. So I have confidence that the new coaching regime will figure out that we need to put Oluokun in the middle. We need to let him play 100% of the snaps. And with that, that makes him a winner and clearly an opportunity for him to move back into the top 12 in total linebacker scoring for IDP. At number 5, Tyrel Dodson with Miami, age 27. Talk about just another guy. However, let's talk about just another guy. He was a starting linebacker for Seattle, playing nearly 100% of the snaps from weeks 1 through 9, and then going to the bye week, they decide to release him, and then they turn it over to Tyrese Knight, as we talked about a little bit earlier. That tells you something right there. So, however, when he went to Miami, he did do a good job in putting up counting stats, but he was also very effective in pass defense as well. And with that, I see him starting next to Jordan Brooks because they made a strong effort to re-sign him being Dodson in this case. So I really do think Dodson will be the number 2 along with Jordan Brooks. And in fact, Dodson may end up being a green dot person. You could argue with the green dot, him being the number 1 and not coming off the field at all, particularly since he could stay on in pass coverage. So really like this place for Tyrel Dodson. Now you might be asking, well, they signed KJ Britt, age 26. They signed Willie Gay, age 27. KJ Britt was a run thumper in Tampa Bay. He only started playing more than about 50-60% of the snaps after Servasia Dennis had kind of gotten hurt. So, and it was sort of almost a trade. Anthony Walker went from Miami to Tampa. KJ Britt went from Tampa to Miami, both of them being run thumper types. Whereas Anthony Walker, I think, has a starting opportunity in Tampa Bay. And notice Tampa Bay didn't try and re-sign KJ Britt or didn't re-sign him. They let him go. So that kind of gives you a feel of how they felt about him from a potential starter perspective, which means I don't see him starting in Miami. I do see him as a valuable special teams person. If there is an injury to Brooks or to Dodson, then maybe Britt gets in there. Still questionable if he would stay in passing downs. Maybe Willie Gay, the other one, if Dodson or Brooks got hurt, the other one being the other signing related to Willie Gay. If Dodson or Brooks got hurt, we're going to try this again. If Dodson or Brooks got hurt, you'd probably see Britt playing run downs and Gay playing more passing downs. So that's how I see the Miami defense right now. But I feel really good about Tyrell Dodson. As you can see, I have him number 5 in the winners because I do think he'll put up great counting stats. I think he'll be on the field for about 100% of the snaps. Okay. Number 4, this might be a shocker to many, Mack Wilson, age 27. I had to double check when I said, really? He's only age 27? But yes, Mack Wilson is only age 27. They did sign Akeem Davis-Gaither, a former 4th-round pick of the Bengals. They did not re-sign Kaiser White. So a lot of people were thinking when they signed Akeem Davis-Gaither that he's going to take on the White role. Mack Wilson stays in his old role. I don't see it that way, actually. I think they were quite pleased with Mack Wilson. I think he moves into the Kaiser White role. I think Davis-Gaither moves into the old Mack Wilson role, which means Mack Wilson is playing nearly 100% of the snaps. And Davis-Gaither is playing what Mack Wilson was playing, usually in that 60 to 70% range. He had a couple of outliers where he jumped up a little bit higher than that because of the team they were playing, but in general, 60 to 70% range. As a result, not really high on his Akeem Davis-Gaither. I would see that he would play the Mack Wilson role if Wilson got hurt, but Wilson has been fairly durable for the most part during his career. So that's how I see Arizona playing out. And Mack Wilson in that Kaiser White role, I see some great success and great opportunities for him there. And yes, I know they signed Michael Walker as well, the former Falcon and Commander and whoever else. He's age 28, more of a special teams guy. He's probably the number 3 linebacker. Owen Popo is probably the number 4 linebacker. The former draft pick out of Auburn is Popo. That's how I kind of see the numbers playing out in Arizona. But Mack Wilson could play the Kaiser right role and be a pretty solid player. Okay. Number 3, Robert Spillane, age 30. New coaching staff, but given the money, 3 years and $37 million is what they signed him for. I don't see that kind of money and Spillane only being on the field for 2-down thumping purposes. I expect him to be a 3-down linebacker. I expect a lot to be funneled to him in this Patriots defense with Mike Vrabel being the new head coach there. That's how I see it playing out. Yes, they signed Jack Gibbons as well, who started a significant amount of games under Vrabel in Tennessee. I know that. They have Jawan Bentley, who was playing at about 255 pounds because that's where the last regime wanted him. And he is in the process of getting his weight down into the 230s, to the mid 230s is his target, and he's getting close to there based on what I read. Yes, so he is there. Jelani Tavai, who is more of a run thumper as well, is also there. Christian Ellis, who they matched the offer that Las Vegas Raiders made to Ellis, and so Christian Ellis stayed with the Patriots. So there's lots of other linebackers there. Spillane is the clear number 1. See all these other guys fighting for that number 2 linebacker spot. I see a kind of combo, maybe a run thumper, Gibbons or Bentley on the first couple of downs, and Christian Ellis coming in on passing downs potentially. In the past, they have moved Kyle Duggar. They've cheated him up to the line of scrimmage, from a safety position, maybe sort of a number 3 linebacker, but maybe a number 2 as well in passing situations. So the only linebacker I feel really good about in New England is Robert Spillane. Have him at number 3 on my list. Another name to keep in mind that could get into this linebacker mix is Marte Mapu, who was drafted from Sacramento State going to his 3rd year, small school. He was originally going to be a started linebacker. They've been playing him at safety last year. With that versatility, does the new defensive staff kind of mix him in as a number 2 linebacker, number 3 linebacker as well? Just something to keep an eye on. Not that Mapu cracks the top 17 in any way, even if he gets moved to linebacker, but something to watch on the impact of these others outside of Spillane. But Spillane, number 3 on my winners list. Number 2 on my winners list, Dre Greenlaw, now the Denver Broncos. Greenlaw is going to his age 28 season. He got overshadowed by Fred Warner in that 4-3 49ers scheme with Warner playing more of the micro. But now he's coming to this Denver scheme where he'd be inside on the 3-4. If you watch, he basically only played one game when he came back from that Achilles injury that he had suffered in the Super Bowl. He played like a man possessed and was all over the field. And I love his ability. He will be a 3-down linebacker. Love his ability. And look at the people who have scored so well in the Denver system, in that 3-4 linebacker system in the past. Alex Singleton, Cody Barton. I see Trey Greenlaw being the number one top linebacker in that role with Denver. So he is number 2 on my list, and I'm thrilled about that. And one side note, I think Denver's defense and special teams is going to be a fantastic, for those of you, a fantastic buy, draft, whatever you want to call it, for those that play with defense and special teams. I think Denver's going to be fantastic with Greenlaw being added, with Singleton coming back from injury, with Hufanga being added to the secondary. Really like where they're going there. And number 1 is a little bit of a cheat because I have 4 people in that list. And that is the number 1 winners are all those that re-signed with their current teams. Zach Bond with Philadelphia, Jamie and Sherwood with the Jets, particularly with CJ Mosley, now a free agent and no plans for the Jets to re-sign him. Terrell Bernard with Buffalo, and Ernest Jones with Seattle. Those all tie for my number 1 winners. Come back to the same systems where they have the opportunity to be very productive or were very productive in the past. All those 4 are winners. All 4 of those I see in the top 12, with the potential exception of Terrell Bernard, only because I do worry about his injury history and his ability to stay on the field for all 17 games. So I'm a little bit worried about him, but as of now, I have him along with the 3 others as my number 1 winners in free agency for linebackers, with a little bit of a cheat for all those 4 that re-signed with their same teams. Okay, so that's our top 17 winners. Before we go into linebacker losers, we did have a question on the YouTube channel from Kevin Hutchinson, who's a regular, and I want to say, Kevin, thank you for being a regular. And it was related to last week's show, and he said, well, what are my thoughts on Tuli Tuipulotu? I can't say his name, the guy from the Los Angeles Chargers, Tuli T, the edge. And with Joey, and that's particularly with Joey Bosa moving on and signing with the Buffalo Bills. So that leaves the Chargers now with 3 edge players, Khalil Mack, Tuli, and Bud Dupree. Khalil Mack just signed that 1 year, I believe it was $17 million, maybe $18 million deal. So he's back and was extremely effective, even given his advanced age for an NFL edge player. So I expect Khalil Mack, if assuming he's healthy, to get 75 to 80% of the snaps. Still leaving a rotation on the other side of things. It's part 1. Part 2 is I think they will sign someone else or draft someone else that will get added to this rotation. So I think they do go back to a 4-man rotation, of which Khalil Mack will dominate with 75%. If you look at Tuli T, his rookie year to his second year, his combined tackles went down from 53 to 42. And when you're talking about an edge player, you want to see those you want players that have these higher tackles, and seeing him going down by, let's just call it 20% or so, is not necessarily a great sign for that. Now, his sacks did go up, and he did finish number 50 in winning pass rusher pressure rate per PFF. So not a slouch. But his snap count, by the way, went down 74% to 67% from rookie year to second year. All that being said, I think Tuli will have 3, 4, maybe if you're lucky, 5 good games. Not sure when that'll happen. And I think a lot of it will be because of this rotation and our situation where one of the 4, once they sign or draft a 4th one, gets injured and he gets a higher snap count in a particular game. And I think that's when that's going to kind of happen. So I'm not really a big Tuli T guy. I know he was a 2nd-round draft pick and all. I'm kind of meh on him. So that's my answer for all those reasons. I don't know if I can call him a winner. I think in certain games he will have opportunities, Kevin, but I just don't see him as a stud, a top 24 finisher at the or a potential finisher from a defensive end/edge position. Okay, so let's move on to the losers at the linebacker position. I have 12 of those. And just a quick reminder, IDP 2025, 50% off at IDP Plus on any subscription. Okay, let's go to the linebacker losers. I start off at number 12 with those free agents not yet signed. EJ Speed, Kaiser White, Eric Kendricks, CJ Mosley, Shaq Thompson. I think EJ Speed gets eventually signed, and I think he does get a starting lineup. It may a starting lineup spot. I still think it happens after the NFL draft at this point in time. The same for Kaiser White. When you start getting into Kendricks and Mosley and Shaq Thompson in their age at their ages with their injury history, particularly Mosley and Shaq Thompson more recently, those might even go into training camp. And if there's some sort of injury that happens, and they get signed by a team, and maybe that'll create a great opportunity. But right now, not having any teams, I count them as losers. Several linebackers have been signed in free agency. None of these guys, and I think a lot of those guys, the free agents, they're what their agents and what they have may have expected from a free agency payment perspective may have priced them too high. Other teams have moved on. Now, EJ Speed didn't have the best of ratings from PFF as a side note. Maybe that was noticed by individuals, where he's really good pass coverage in the pass. He really struggled this past year. Not sure why. Maybe it was some of the injuries he was battling. So anyway, right now, all of those guys are losers because they're not on a team. So we'll see how it plays out over time. At number 11, Jordan McGee with Washington. I was very high on Jordan McGee coming out of the 2024 NFL draft. Thought he have thought he had a really bright future, and I still think he has a bright future. He did have some injury issues this past year, but Washington has Luvu coming back, Frankie Luvu coming back because he had a multi-year contract, and they re-signed Bobby Wagner for another year. So I do love the fact that he's going to get to learn from the veteran Bobby Wagner how to be a leader, how to be a Mike linebacker, all that kind of great stuff. But for this current year, unless there's an injury, he's probably going to be limited to primarily special teams. He's someone I want to stash for Dynasty, but with the re-signing of Wagner, I just think he's a year away, and he's a loser for linebackers post free agency. At number 10, with the Chargers, I have Junior Colson. The Chargers re-signed Denzel Perryman. They re-signed Troy Dye. Do I think they want Junior Colson, they being the Chargers, to jump in and seize that number 2 linebacker role next to Deion Henley? Yes, I do think they want that. But this is almost a repeat of the rookie year for Colson. He had so many injuries. He missed a lot of training camp, missed a lot of games, didn't get nearly the practice experience that they would have liked. So early in the year, I expect a lot of platooning between Colson and Perryman, which won't be good for either one. And look, Perryman only signed a 1-year, $3 million deal. I think there's some incentives, but that's basically what he signed for. So it's not like he's making a lot of money. And we always talk about following the money. That's not a lot of money. So eventually, I do expect Colson to take over the role. But early in the year, I could see Perryman, and I could see people getting very frustrated with Colson. As his experience grows, and as we get into the back end of the year, I think Henley next to Colson will be fantastic. But it's almost one of these things you might want to let somebody else draft Colson, get frustrated with him, drop him, and then pick him up and stash him on your bench. Just some food for thought there. Okay. At number 9, Damone Clark with Dallas. We're already seeing late last year how he had moved and dropped to the number 4 linebacker. He was behind Kendricks, he was behind Overshown, he was behind Lufau. So he had slipped significantly on that. Okay. Now it's a whole new coaching staff, granted. But what did they do? We talked about it earlier. They traded for Kenneth Murray. They signed Jack Sanborn, who Eberflus knows very well, the new DC for Dallas. And they have Maris Lufau coming back. And eventually Overshown will come back from injury, if not late this year, 2025 and 2026. Damone Clark's dead. If you've been stashing him in Dynasty, time to move on. And granted, I think many people know who have been following me for a while that I'm an LSU fan, grew up in South Louisiana. I'm a Saints fan as well, but I'm giving up on Damone Clark within the Dallas Cowboys situation. So he is number 9 on the post-free agency loser list for linebackers. At number 8, Trevin Wallace in Carolina. I believe that the Carolina Panthers signed Christian Roseboom away from the Rams, not for special teams prowess, but to become the number 2 linebacker next to Josie Jewell. So I expect Jewell 1, Roseboom 2, Trevin Wallace 3 in terms of the linebacker pecking order in Carolina. Maybe Wallace surprises and beats out Roseboom, but I don't think they signed Roseboom just for special team purposes. So Wallace, sorry for you Wallace owners right now, but he's number 3. He could end up getting playing time. Jules getting up there in age, could get injured given his age, and he has had some injuries in the past. So, but as of now, Trevin Wallace, number 3 linebacker, and on the loser list, number 8. At number 7, and some people might argue where I have him on this list, but Ivan Pace. Some might say he should be lower, some might say he's higher on the loser list. But either way, Ivan Pace is on the list. Brian Flores is coming back. When Brian Cashman was healthy and playing, he played basically 100% of the snaps. Ivan Pace usually only played 30 to 40% of the snaps. Adding to that, they signed the veteran Eric Wilson away from the Packers in free agency, and I could easily see Eric Wilson being the replacement for Cashman if Cashman were injured instead of Ivan Pace. So Ivan Pace at this point in time, Ricky Rod's 66 opinion is that he's going to be the number 3 linebacker in Minnesota behind Cashman, behind Wilson. Now Cashman does have a heavy injury history in the past, and he missed some games this past year as well. But Wilson moves into number 1, Pace would move into number 2 at that point. Just don't see it for Pace, folks. He is someone that I'm definitely trying to trade at this point in time. Number 5 in Atlanta, Troy Andersen. When the Atlanta Falcons decided not to tender Nate Landman and let him go as a free agent, which we talked about him a little bit earlier, I thought, wow, this is exciting news for Troy Andersen, and I'm gearing up to try and make trade offers for him. Then what happens? The Falcons signed Divine Diablo to a 2-year, $14 million contract. Caden Ellis cleared number 1 in Atlanta. But with that contract, granted it's not a 3-year, 30-something million that Robert Spillane signed, but still it leaves open the possibility that Diablo is the number 2 linebacker. I'm not a Diablo fan. The Raiders weren't. Diablo was down to 60 to 70% of the snaps playing time, sometimes even a little bit less than that last year with the Raiders. So how good is he really? Not probably that great, but probably good enough to put a fly in the ointment related to Troy Andersen and how much time Troy Andersen is on the field. So unless Diablo completely bombs out during camp here in the fall, I expect Diablo 2, Andersen 3, and potentially with those two maybe even being a platoon situation between running downs and passing downs. Sad for Troy Andersen. Had much higher hopes for him. Number 5 on the loser list for post-free agency linebackers, Payton Wilson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Elandon Roberts set to become a free agent, with Payton Wilson having a year under his belt, I expected Payton Wilson to jump in and be side by side with Patrick Queen as a starter for Pittsburgh. What did they do, though? They went and signed Malik Harrison. Now, Malik Harrison wasn't a full-time starter in Baltimore, and he rotated. And we all know about, well, we should know about the Trent Simpson situation, how that just fell apart last year in Baltimore for him. But even with that, Malik Harrison couldn't seize a full-time role next to Roquan Smith in Baltimore. So that signals rotation person. You also have Cole Holcomb, who missed all of last year with the severe knee injury he had suffered middle of the previous season. He's back. He had his contract restructured significantly, but he is in there. So what does that mean? It means it doesn't feel good right now for Payton Wilson to seize 100% of the snaps next to Patrick Queen with Harrison, with Holcomb. I see, once again, unfortunately, another rotation going on there. And so I had, just like with Troy Andersen, I had such high hopes for uh, him being Peyton Wilson, but it just doesn't appear it's going to happen with some of these signings. So because of the high hopes and all, and that's why I have Andersen number 6 and Wilson at number 5, because those high hopes have been dashed. So on the loser linebacker list, post-draft free agency, number 5 was Peyton Wilson, and number 4 was a combo, Drew Sanders and Justin Sternin, with a caveat of maybe Alex Singleton. So we talked about Dre Greenlaw being signed, and with what they're paying him, he's going to, and with his age, we expect him to be the number 1 linebacker for Denver. In that 3-4, who's going to be the number 2 linebacker next to him? Well, before they signed Greenlaw, I was expecting Alex Singleton to be coming back from his injury at age 32, being the number 1, and Drew Sanders, the rookie from, well, was rookie from Arkansas, now going to second year, I expected Sanders to be that linebacker next to him. But now, Greenlaw number 1, Singleton probably number 2. Granted, he's going to his age 32 season. Hopefully he recovers from that ACL, and that's what happens. And if it does, that means bad news for Sanders, bad news for Sternin. If Singleton hasn't recovered as well from that injury, then I expect Sanders to jump into that number 2 role and Sternin to be the odd man out. So lots of gyrations going with that Denver number 2 linebacker spot that I just talked about. But as of now, I see Sanders and Sternin being the losers. I won't call Singleton a winner because I still think he's the quote number 2 linebacker. And Greenlaw, as I talked about, was a big winner, but just not comfortable with any of these guys. I was really hoping Sanders would be a huge opportunity, but right now, just don't see it. Okay. With Cleveland, boy, I did some serious rambling on those last couple. Sorry I wasn't as clear, folks. My apologies. I got to get back into the rhythm and routine. But at Cleveland with number 3, JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. As I talked about earlier, still no word on his neck injury situation. Nothing about, oh, he's ahead of schedule. Oh, we're looking forward to seeing him in training camp. Nothing along those lines being spoken anywhere. That sounds like bad news. Right now, he is my number 3 loser linebacker post-draft free agency. Number 2, Detroit. All the linebackers except Alex Anzalone are my number 2 loser linebackers. I have a feeling, even with Kelvin Shepard being the new DC replacing Aaron Glenn, who went off to the Jets to be their head coach, that they're going to continue this linebacker rotation with all these folks coming back from injury. Okay, Anzalone's coming back from injury. Malcolm Rodriguez has come back from injury. They signed Derek Barnes to a very nice contract coming back from injury, who they really liked. They signed Grant Stewart in free agency. They brought back Zeke Turner, Trevor Nowaski, Anthony Pittman. Now, some of these guys, those latter few, may or may not make the team. It could be a special teams battle and all, but you never know when a couple of those guys might get mixed in for a few plays as well. I just expect Detroit to play Anzalone primarily and have this rotation thing, which would just be horrendous for Jack Campbell. And I know how frustrated we were when he was only playing 70, 80% of the snaps. Really didn't jump up in that 90+% range until on a regular basis until Anzalone got hurt. So I think all these linebackers for Detroit outside of Alex Anzalone are losers on the linebacker side of things. I just predict they're going to keep this rotation thing. I could be wrong, but I've been right quite a bit, by the way, as a side note. And so that's bad news for Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, all the Malcolm Rodriguez, etc. Only good news is Alex Anzalone. Number 2 loser linebackers, the Detroit linebackers outside of Alex Anzalone. And my number 1 loser from the Kansas City Chiefs, Nick Bolton. You might be asking, well, Nick Bolton's a good player. He's put up good stats. Yeah, that was multiple years ago. The way he is being used, the snap count utilization that they use with some of the rotations that they have, plus the way the Kansas City Chiefs offense has been dinking and dunking and methodically going down the field, which I expect to continue this coming year, even with Marquise Brown being re-signed and Rashee Rice coming back and so forth. I just expect teams are going to force them to just dink and dunk up and down the field, which also means a higher snap count for KC's offense, a lower snap count for Kansas City's defense. Same scheme, same usage, same offensive situation, meaning lower snap count. Nick Bolton, by re-signing with Kansas City, is my number one linebacker loser. All righty. That wraps up our linebackers, winners and losers. So with that, let's wrap things up a little bit. Our next show, we're going to do defensive backs. A lot to talk about with defensive backs, particularly with the low repeat rates. And there's been a lot of movement already, a lot of opportunities for new players jumping into the top 12 and top 24 defensive backs. We will talk about that next week. The following session, we're going to do some mock drafting with IDPs or IDPs in offense. Haven't decided. So if you have a preference, if you want me to just do an IDP rookie mock draft or an offense and IDP rookie mock draft, let me know in the YouTube comments and I'll take that into consideration. Maybe we'll end up doing both, but I'd love to hear your feedback and we'll figure out which ones to prioritize. So defensive backs first, and we'll come back with another show with some mock rookie drafts, including IDP for sure. If you have any questions, leave them on the YouTube channel as Kevin Hutchinson did, and I'll either answer them in YouTube or make a note that I will answer them during the show as I did today. Give a thumbs up on YouTube if you like this. Give me a follow at RickyRod66. Don't forget about that IDP Plus, idpplus.com. With the promo code IDP2025, IDP2025, get 50% off of any subscription for the great articles, the rankings, the tools. Go back and listen to earlier to all the different tools that I elaborated on, not to mention Discord, where we give a lot of help to people in those Discord channels. So with that, this is the now retired Ricky Rodrigue wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another, everybody. And I'm out of here. So I'll catch you next time and take care.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.